I guess welcome everyone to the StakeRocketPool channel. I am Sunshine with She Knows, and today I'm speaking with Ken. Ken, as far as I know, you are a Rocket Pool validator. You are on the governance team, and you also lead community calls. You're exactly who I want to speak with today as I'm exploring the mysteries of ETH staking, liquid staking derivatives, and mini pools. My goal is to explore staking options for myself by lots of research, community expert interviews, and just connections with people like you. So thank you so much for meeting with me today. Tell me a fun fact about yourself. What are your passions and purpose? And what have you been working on recently?
Yeah, well, first, it's very, very nice to meet you. I've gotten a couple of your episodes on there, and I very much enjoyed them. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, your background in my bio was, I think, pretty accurate. I'm a very active member, I think, in the Rocket Pool community, and been a staker and node operator with them since their launch shortly after the Beacon Chain launch, and very much enjoyed it. But like you, I have a full-time job in the real world. I call it fiat mining, and I too work for an institution of higher education. So it's kind of interesting to learn and explore the blockchain and kind of the Ethereum community somewhat as a hobby or as a second profession. I very much enjoy it and find it intellectually stimulating.
Yeah, so you are the perfect person I want to talk to. Do you have any technical background as a developer or IT or anything that kind of propelled you to be a node validator?
Yeah, no, not really. My background in all things is in biochemistry and molecular biology. I spent most of my professional career in a practice called health physics. It's basically using physics and science to protect people from radiation. So it's used a lot when researchers or medical professions have to use radiation or radioactive materials as part of their research or professional practice. But I've always been a little bit of a nerd. I enjoyed computers ever since kind of high school, and certainly have always been kind of the go-to computer person in a lot of the offices I've worked at, and so I've enjoyed it more as a hobby or kind of interest.
That's cool. And is there anything fun that you do in your free time when you're not doing all these other things?
well, I would say I'm kind of making crypto my hobby. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, as I said. But I'm the parent of 3 young adults now, and they keep me
Very
quite
nice.
busy on the weekends.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, let's start off with just the basics. Can you explain your role or the role as a Rocket Pool node validator on the Rocket Pool network?
Yeah, and so the thing to kind of know is that as a validator, you're really a validator on the Ethereum network, right? So you're running and maintaining a computer that is performing a duty. It's syncing the blockchain, which you don't have to be a validator for. Anybody can create get a computer, download the appropriate software, and you too can be syncing the blockchain and relaying the blockchain. It's a peer-to-peer network. So each node, each computer, it's called a node, is receiving messages and repeating those messages in kind of the gossip network, right? But you can, if you want to invest in it, right, put some ether at stake. You can place a deposit, and as such, you get to do something in addition to just relaying the network and kind of querying the network. You get to do something called a test to the network. And all that means is your node will submit a message if you have one validator, about every 6 or 7 minutes, 6.4 minutes to be exact, that will just say, hey, I think this is where the chain is. I think this was the last, what they call finalized epoch. This was the head of the chain. This is the last justified epoch, kind of another measurement, just those 3 measurements, and you do it within some timeliness. Within you get like kind of this 12-second slot, and there's 4 seconds in which you're supposed to speak or attest to in there. And as long as you do that, they will pay you a little bit of Ethereum, a little bit of ether for that I guess privilege of attesting. And so now what Rocket Pool is Rocket Pool is just a staking pool that allows you to come in and perform those duties with a little bit less financial cost. So you won't have to deposit, Ethereum requires you to deposit 32 ETH to make that attestation. That's kind of your down on the table, if you will. Rocket Pool allows you to come in with substantially less than that. Currently, right now, it's at 8 ETH, and there's plans in the work to reduce that to lower amounts. They're kind of planning now for 4 ETH and a future upgrade that's now on the drawing board.
You explained that really well, Ken. Thank you for that. Can you briefly go into the LSD, the liquid staking derivatives, the RETH and RPL, and how that kind of coincides with the mini pool and how that works?
Yeah. So the way that Rocket Pool allows you to come in with less than that 32, right? The Ethereum protocol, which is what we're validating, right? Rocket Pool is just a means to validate on the Ethereum network. The way that it obtains that 32 ETH in order to put down as a deposit is it takes a fraction of that. Let's just take the 8 ETH LEB for an example. It takes 8 ETH from the node operator. So I understand that might be you pretty soon, right? Or anybody else that is interested to become a validator. And then it has to take the additional 24 ETH from somewhere else. And the way that a staking pool does that is it provides another asset called a liquid staking, and they prefer the term token. It used to be called liquid staking derivative. Derivative has a couple of legal connotations that don't necessarily apply in this case, so they're trying to rebrand it and use the term LST, liquid staking token, to just add clarity to it. And what it does is they collect this from anybody else that wants to contribute. And in exchange, what they get is they get a receipt token that basically says that they have a share of the profits that are earned. And so in the case when you run a validator, it takes 24 ETH from the R ethers, individuals that have been given a token called RETH, Rocket Pool ETH, that represents their share of staked ETH. And so when you earn rewards over your validator, a share goes to you as the node operator, and a share goes to the people that have purchased the liquid staking token, the R ethers. And at an 8 LEB, it's about a 25. You're putting down about 25% of the deposit. They're putting down 75% of the deposit. So it's about that split. Now you make a little bit more as a node operator because you get a portion of their split, and they call that the node operator commission, because you're the one doing the work. You're plugging into your machine, you're keeping the software updated. And so you earn a little bit more for that work, and they earn a little bit less, but they get some benefits. The main benefit is that on the node operator side, your deposit and kind of their deposit in a way too is locked up, right? Meaning that you just can't respend it again. You have to exit out of the validating process in order to get your deposit back. Okay. What they get is a liquid staking token, that RETH, that remains liquid, which means that they can kind of cash and sell that as quickly as they like to and redeposit it in other DeFi opportunities. So that flexibility, that kind of liquidness, that fluidity of that token is what kind of incentivizes somebody to go in on the RE side of the house versus the node operator side. There's other factors as well too, but that's one of the main ones.
Sure. Yeah, that's my understanding. Because it's liquid, you're able to, either use that to go into other projects for DeFi to earn additional APY, or it's a lot easy to exchange on exchanges if you wanted to cash out quickly. And so it makes it a lot more liquid and accessible. Some people would say safer. Now, what would you say as far as those are advantages? Is there any disadvantages with the liquid staking token that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple. I mean, one of those is that, when you convert into a liquid staking token, you are basically buying into an ecosystem or committing to an ecosystem from that token. And there's a couple of risks that come with that. One of those is with any staking protocol, there is what they'll call a contractual risk, right? That these are written as a smart contract that's on Ethereum. And so there could be a bug in that contract that would allow somebody to exploit it, to steal the funds and so forth. Now, pretty much most of the major liquid staking providers out there have very robust and audited and reviewed codes. There's a large bounty on it that if somebody does find a bug, they'll probably be more incentivized to claim the bounty than exploit it.
Oh.
So there's a little bit of assurances on theirs. The other thing is with the ecosystem is everything that you described is absolutely correct, but it's only going to be as useful as the integrations are for that token. So if you choose kind of a very unknown liquid staking token, it might be more difficult to find those exchanges where you can convert it, or to find the integrations in DeFi protocols where you could use it as collateral for a loan or use it in an integration. But if you stick to one of the major liquid staking tokens, then there's many more integrations available, many more uses of it, and it's accepted in kind of more places.
Got it. Okay. So tell me about, so the value of the REs, is it the amount of staked, the amount of validators, or the amount of staked REs? It'll make the value of the REs token go up and continue to rise. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, you've got very much the gist of it, right? So you have all these nodes that are doing work for the network. They're securing it, right? They're attesting to what they think the head of the chain is. They're verifying that the blocks are valid, and are kind of, you know, saying, okay, that's what we think is the legitimate canonical chain of Ethereum. Okay, and for that they're getting remunerated, and they're paid for by the Ethereum protocol a small amount. And a validator receives about, you know, this is on average now, about half of its return from Ethereum, just based upon the emission of these validating rewards. Okay. And then the other part it receives is something from kind of its fee recipients. And this includes any tips or any incentives that are paid for by folks that are transacting on Ethereum, that kind of want their transaction included in the next block. They'll tip more to kind of get into that block. And more importantly, there's something a little bit more advanced topic called MEV. It stands for maximal extractable value, but it's these opportunities that exist when there's kind of imbalances in the network, arbitrage opportunities or liquidation opportunities. And so when you're a node operator, you can actually, instead of proposing your own block, you can auction off that block space. And there's a very lucrative market, especially in times of high activity or times of high imbalance, where professional builders will pay a very high premium for your block space. And so you can earn rewards there. And so what happens is your node earns these rewards. And then, of course, if you recall, the rewards that you earn both in what they call the consensus layer, that's what Ethereum pays out on, and the execution layer, that's where kind of the MEV is paid out on, have to be split or prorated between you, the node operator, and the ethers that participate in it. But you'll make a little bit bigger share than 25% with an LEV8, and you get to keep that. And then the rest gets returned back to the RETH contract, and that's then prorated across all the users worldwide that are holding RETH.
Now, I've heard some node validators say that they don't believe in MEV, they don't like it, they don't use it. Can you tell me a little bit about? They didn't explain why. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that's kind of coming forward, and it seems to circle all the way around. So, and in fact, some people will maybe differentiate MEV into, I don't know, they use terms sometimes, good MEV, bad MEV, right? So I mentioned that it's caused by this imbalance, right? So something that might be considered good MEV is, let's say that you realize that you go to a grocery store somewhere, right? You realize that one grocery store, they're selling apples for 10 cents. And at the next grocery store, they're selling apples for 5 cents, right? Well, you could come up with a plan that says, well, you know, what I could do is I could go buy a whole bunch of the apples at a lower cost and sell them to the grocery store at a higher cost, right? You could make some money doing that. And the grocery store with the higher cost, the way these protocols work is, as it's buying more, the cost will go down, right? And so you will equalize those two payments between them. And that's usually viewed, they call it simple arbitrage, right? Buy low, sell high. And usually that's seen as a good thing, because if you're the next user coming into the grocery store to buy an apple, you want to make certain the price you're getting is fair, and you don't have to shop around, and you've kind of assured that, hey, whatever you're paying at one place is what the other grocery store is selling. So the users benefit from it. The arbitragee, the arbitrageur, I guess it would be, that did that trade and kind of balance the two pools, they made some money, right? Because they take a little bit of the profit off of it. So that's considered a good thing. A bad kind of form of MEV would be something that hurts the end user, right? So for instance, if you were going in and you were going to buy a lot of apples, let's say you were going to buy 10,000 apples, you could run ahead of that person. It's called front running, and you can go to that grocery store and you could buy those 5-cent apples, right? And then what happens is the price goes up when that big order comes in, right? They'll sell the first couple for 5 cents, the next for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Eventually now the price is 25 cents an apple, right? And then what you do is after that big order went through, you do a transaction at the end of them. They call it back running, where now you bought them at 5 cents. They're now trading at 25 cents. And now you sell your apples that you bought at 5 cents, and you've made a profit. And what you've done is you made a profit on the person that was buying the large amount because they paid a higher average cost than what they would have if you didn't front run them. And so sometimes that's considered bad MEV, right? And so that's that's kind of the argument between them. The other counter to that is, well, it was a free market, right? They put that order in the open, they call it the mem pool, the open order book. People saw it there, and so they acted upon it if they could.
Yeah, so maybe somebody may feel a little ethically challenged on which way to go. Is this the software that does the MEV for you, or do you at some point have a less automation where you can pick and choose?
Yeah, you kind of have a little bit of both. The ecosystem has grown up, I think, in the past, maybe it's been a year and a half, that these MEV block marketplace auction has come up. It was created by a company called Flashbots, or organization called Flashbots. The software that runs, it's a kind of a standard, they call it Mev Boost, and so it's an open piece of software that's there, and it relies upon this ecosystem, an ecosystem of some people that are searching for these MEV opportunities are called searchers. Another set of people that are running very fast computers that try to put all these little searches, are called bundles, together, and they build a block, and these are called block builders, right? They're like, oh, I could take this MEV opportunity and that one and this one and this one, and I put it all together, and it's a substantial amount. Then they use yet another player called a relay. It sounds a little complicated, but they're like auction exchanges that take all these bids. So a builder will say, well, I'll pay one ETH to have that next block. The next builder will say, I'll pay 1.1. The next builder says 1.2. At some point, within this 4-second window, this auction has to come to an end. And then what happens is and it sounds much more complicated than I'm explaining it. It's actually pretty easy. It's just a click on the software. But then what happens is your node, it's ready to build a block. And if you're enrolled in one of these relays, it queries the relays and says, oh, okay, auction house, okay, Sotheby's, what was my top bid for this block? And it says, well, the top bid now is 1.5. It slams a gavel. You signed to buy it. You signed to proposing that block. And that's it. The block that was built by that winning builder is submitted. You sign it, and what you get is a fraction of that. You get your bid. So maybe the block builder was able to earn 1.6 ETH, and they paid you 1.5 ETH.
Got it.
And the advantage really goes to the proposer, the node operator, because the builder wants to kind of win, and so they'll give you a large percentage of whatever they're going to extract. Probably 95% or more of it will go to the block proposer. That's the node operator.
So
but all of that happens in a very easy click of the software, right?
Oh, okay.
You install it called Mev Boost, and in at least the RocketPool configuration file, you can select a couple of different things. You could choose a little bit about the type of MEV you want to participate in. I think there's 3 options, or there used to be one is shutting down, so I think there'll be 2. One, and the difference resides around a broad but conservative interpretation of a U.S. law on OFAC that is on the tornado cache, right? Whether or not I think it's that one, but it's like sorry, maybe it's not just tornado cache. It's like SEC banned addresses or some
any funneling or anything.
Yeah. I'll go back and look at that one. So maybe double check me there. But or you can flip the mode around and you can actually select from the relays. I want to say there's right now about half a dozen relays, these auction houses that are out there, and Rocket Pool supports most of them. I think there's a few that aren't in the Rocket Pool stack right now, and you can just click and check and select which ones you want to subscribe to and not subscribe to. So you do have some customization for it.
Yeah, I heard maybe a month ago there was a guy on Twitter that was posted that he got $100 million in rewards. I don't know if that was MEV. How does that happen?
Yeah, so these states of imbalance sometimes happen very quickly, right? Like something will usually happen in the world, or maybe it happens online on the blockchain, and these transactions come in very fast, and people act on them very fast, and it creates that imbalance. Like all of a sudden they might hear that Elon Musk is going to buy all the apples. He's looking for apples. So you run to your grocery store and you buy them all out. And now the price isn't 10 cents an apple, it's $10 an apple, right? So if somebody in another grocery store didn't get that memo, right? You now have this huge arbitrage opportunity. You can buy them at 5 cents in one grocery store, sell them at $10 at the other. You can make hundreds of ETH. That's thousands of dollars, $1 million, right? More. So now the block proposer is willing to, send out bounties of 950,000, right? 400 ETH or whatever to the next block proposer, right? If you take this bid. Now those are very rare. They call them lottery blocks, right? When they're that large. So it's like out of the hundreds of thousands of blocks produced or millions of produced in Ethereum, right? They're just a handful. But these lottery blocks, maybe of not that significance, do happen, and they do contribute a significant portion of MEV. In fact, most of the MEV earned by a validator is actually in these lottery blocks, right? You'll always earn a little bit of MEV each block you propose, but anything of substantial value is very rare. Which brings up one thing that Rocket Pool has that I know a couple of its competitors are starting to look at and implementing, but is unique, is something called the smoothing pool. I don't know if anybody's talked to you about that yet.
No, please tell.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that was done is, so these lottery blocks, and the name's appropriate, not only are they very large value MEV blocks, right, but they're very rare, right? You can go your entire lifetime owning multiple validators, and for the proposals you get, that just never syncs up with one of these high value blocks. But there's a mechanism that Rocket Pool has called the smoothing pool, which is an opt-in. You can choose to stay out of it, that's the default, or you can voluntarily opt in, and you can leave. I want to say at any time, but there's certain windows, like every 28 days there's an opportunity to leave. I think there's a minimum 28-day commitment you have to participate in, if I recall correctly, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong in that statement. But what it does is it pools. It's basically like a lottery pool. It says, okay, look, everybody that's in the smoothing pool agrees to share your MEV with everybody else, right? That's in the smoothing pool. And so it could be that, one of you could win that lottery block, and that kind of sucks for you because you could have kept all that money for yourself, and minus your commission, right, or your proration with the R ethers. But if you're in the smoothing pool, you're going to share it with all the other node operators. And if you're one of the other node operators, well, you are more likely to, the way the math works out. I did a paper on it, and others have kind of done the math and modeling as well, that says, you've got about a 4 out of 5 chance of making more money being in the smoothing pool, just the way the frequency of these MEV blocks are, than if you decided not to be, right? So you could take a 20% risk that, you were one of the lucky ones, got a big MEV, but you had to donate it to everyone else in the pool. But 80% of you in the pool are going to benefit from those few lottery blocks, but it's going to generate a higher overall return for your validator in there.
Got it. Okay.
So it's something that probably benefits more people, the vast majority of people that are in there. It's worth looking at and considering. And I know it's been successful enough that a number of other staking pools and even just independent node operators are looking at creating smoothing pools for similar things, because there is kind of a long-term advantage to aggregating those returns.
So if you're in the smoothing pool, then how are you able to, you still have your own parameters, that, because you said that there's different MEV that you can select and choose. You said, I think, half a dozen. So are you still choosing those, and you're choosing the same with whoever you're in the smoothing pool with, or it's just you're randomly placed in a smoothing pool?
No, you choose as the node operator to opt in, and
Okay.
once you opt in, the rules right now is that you're supposed to turn on MEV, right? There's a way to retroactively enforce it, but it's one of the kind of areas of active integration is how to ensure that everybody in this moving pool is now equally contributing into the MEV. And the rule right now is you have to select at least one of the relays that is provided in Rocket Pool. So I think it's about 5 or 6 of them that are listed currently. You can turn on all of them, right? I mean, if you wanted to maximize the chance of your winning the highest bid block, you would want to auction that block at multiple auction houses and take the highest bid, right? Don't just choose Sotheby's, put it on eBay, put it on whatever auction blocks there are there, these MEV relays. And your node will automatically select whichever relay has the highest bid at the time it's time for it to propose, right? And so you could turn on all or some set of those relays that are on there. But if you're in the smoothing pool, you're supposed to have at least one of those relays turned on.
Yeah, MEV sounds interesting because it sounds like, at one end, it should be there for efficiency because you're improving the block space and everything. But at the other end, it can be market manipulation where you're shorting and longing as well. And like, when do you ethically draw the line when you're harming somebody else?
Yeah, and it's something I think the entire blockchain is looking at. There's some pros and cons to it either way. And so one of the things that I know the core protocol is looking at is just doing something called enshrined proposer builder separation to kind of just make it more protocol determined deterministically by the protocol, right? So that way it's fair and there isn't that kind of adjustment to it, but it does right now represent a substantial fraction of your earnings on a validator. So I think it's one of the things that just natively in any open market to buy and sell, you're going to create these imbalances, and so who takes advantage of those imbalances and profits from them is something I think all blockchains are going to have to wrestle with.
Yeah. So I do have a question for you that I was thinking about as I'm reading these. I'm trying to get together my checklist before I work on becoming a node validator. And one of the things that I was curious about is what I hear is the slashing. The number one way for slashing is if you run two validator keys at the same time, and then one goes down and the other one picks up, then you get slashed. And a lot of people do this on accident, from what I hear. Can you explain why you would do that and how it could cause a slashing?
Yeah. I guess I'll start by 2 things. I mean, one, people like saying the word slashing. It sounds bad. It sounds horrible. Like the slasher,
Yeah.
A horror movie,
Yeah.
right? And the first message I tell people is Ethereum is a very forgiving protocol. It was designed for individuals like you and I that stake and validate at home. It was envisioned by people all around the world being able to not only run the nodes and the gossip network, but being able to participate and to secure that blockchain by attesting to it, right? And so you attest, you make a statement, and you say this is what the last correct epochs were, and this is the head of the blockchain, and your view may be correct or wrong. Who's to say, right? It's just, hey, this is what Sunshine thinks that the head and the epoch are, and this is what Ken thinks the head and the epoch are. And what it does is it collects all those thoughts, and the one that is determined to be the correct one is the one that the majority of us agree to, right? And so Ethereum uses a 66% consensus threshold is the way the math works out in this problem that they looked at called the Byzantine generals problem, right? But so basically whatever all the nodes that speak and attest agreed to in this consensus model that was created, that's what the canonical chain is, right? Okay. Now you will never be hurt by attesting to something different, because maybe that's what you really thought the head of the chain was, because that's what you saw. Your computer's in a different part of the world. It gets information differently than what mine does. Maybe you were trying to be deceivious and you're like, man, it's over here that's the head, guys. Over here, really, believe me. I don't know. protocol doesn't know, it doesn't matter. But what it would be deceivious and what would cause this slashing, and we'll talk about that in just a second, is if you said two things, right? If you said, this is the head over here, right, or the epoch state, and this is the head over here, right? It's called a double attestation, and you can't say two different things in that same 6-minute window that you were supposed to, attest to whatever block you were supposed to attest to. You can only pick one.
Okay.
And as long as you can only pick one, it doesn't matter which one you pick, you'll never get hurt, right? Now, you won't make money if you choose the one that the rest of the chain thought was the real one. Okay, you don't get hurt, but you just don't make anything. Small amounts that you make every 6 minutes, right? So it doesn't hurt much. So you kind of want to get it right, but it doesn't hurt if you choose wrong. We all choose wrong on occasion, right?
Sure.
Now, the slashing occurs when you do something like either attesting to two different blocks, doing something a little bit more complex to explain called surround voting, which is you pick one head of the chain and then you pick something below it, and so it kind of creates this loop in the chain, and you can't do that. And when you go to propose, you can't propose two blocks. Right? You can't propose one from Sotheby's and one from eBay. It's got to be the same block, right? Those are really the only three. Maybe there's a fourth one I'm missing that will cause you to get slashed. And slashing sounds bad, but what it means is they're going to penalize you with could be very large, but most of the time it's hurtful, but not a large amount out of your 32 ETH. If you're the only person to get slashed, or if only 1% of the network gets slashed in a window of time, they're going to take one out of those 32 ETH. So it's not, hurts, but it's not irreparable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't want to get slashed. It's not going to totally take everything. It's going to take a small amount from you. It's going to kick you off the network. You can come back in. You have to go get another ETH from somewhere, and then you can get right back on and keep validating again with your validator. Now, how do you get slashed? Well, you get slashed by either purposely manipulating the code to do something nefarious, right? In which case, well, then you get what you deserve. Or maybe you're a node operator and you have what I'll call sloppy practices, right? You installed your keys, which is the signature that you're using to sign your attestations. Most of the inadvertent accidental slashings have been when a node operator installs their keys on two different computers. And obviously the computers don't know that there's another version of it. Maybe I put a little asterisk there. And so they do these double attests. One computer says, oh, I thought this was the head. And the next one says, no, it was there. And you double attest on your validator. The same keys were used.
Why would somebody do that? Why would somebody put the same keys on two different validators?
Yeah, the big ones have been in protocols that are trying to improve efficiency. Most common, home stakers, I think it's because they upgraded their hardware and they thought they shut off the old computer, right? And they didn't realize that maybe it's most nodes are auto programmed to come back on, and when the power comes on, and keep attesting, and they didn't totally delete their keys, right? Now there's some safeguards that are in there, so it's rare. I mean, it happens because people, I think, take off the safety guards on them, right? So for instance, most if not all of the software that you use, right? There's different versions of the software. It's kind of like your node software. It's like a web browser. You can be viewing the web in Safari or Chrome or whatever browser you want, right? But these node software, they have something called doppelganger protection in, which is before they started testing, they listen for 2 or 3 epochs. So, somewhere between 12 and 20 minutes. And they just listen just to make certain no other node out there with your keys started saying this is the head. And if it does, it's like it won't fire up. It's like you're running some other keys somewhere here.
Yeah.
But so they shut that off, right? Because they think, well, I don't want to miss 2 blocks intentionally for a few pennies, but that's pound foolish, and in there. Keep doppelganger on there. And then sometimes they mess with there's an attestation database. It's called a slashing protection database on your node, that every time it does a test, it records it. It says, oh, I've already attested and I did it. So it doesn't do it again. Sometimes they'll delete that and say on the same computer, it didn't know it already attested to that block, and it reattest. And it's okay if it picks the same block twice, right? But if it picks something different, then you have a problem.
So what you're saying is there's software out there if you're anxious.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's software if you're anxious, and honestly, it's good hygiene practice, right? Like when you have any private key and you put it somewhere, just put it there, right? I mean, they have a paper backup or a steel backup of that key so you can recover stuff, right? But keep
Right.
that cold and offline. But if you're going to put it in, a node has to have that hot key, that hot signing signature, because it's doing it every 6 minutes. Just don't put it on two computers. And if you're upgrading your hardware, worst case, take a baseball bat to the old one, right? Or like totally. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, or erase it 2 times or 3 times over, or ask for help of, did I totally erase it and destroy it? Don't keep it around thinking, well, just in case I might keep it, because what happens, a couple months go by, your kids plug in the computer, plug in the old node, and it fires up, right? You just
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. So Ken, I'm curious, take me back for when you started, and I'm curious what hardware you started with, and how complex it was for you to get started, and if there was any kind of trouble pains when you started that you can remember. Did you
Yeah,
start
I
with
mean,
custom built node, or did you configure everything the way you liked it?
yeah, I mean, so like, it's interesting. Say, you know, my story, I started early when the beacon chain, that's the change to the proof of stake, was
Mm-hmm.
coming around. And like
Yeah,
I
in
said, I do this
2020.
as a hobby, so I do a little bit more than what the average staker needs to do, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
find it fascinating. It's sort of like a car hobby, right? I get a lot of enjoyment about, you know, building the hardware. I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that I've chosen is the NUC line. You know, it's a very cheap, low cost. Intel made them for a number of years. They've now, I guess, licensed it to, you know, third party manufacturers like Asus that will continue that line, but they're a small form factor computer that you can buy. It does not require a lot of horsepower. I'm kind of the oddity person. I bought old hardware off of eBay. I run an 8th generation NUC, which, if you don't know them, it's about 6 years old. I think I bought it for a couple $100 on eBay, and you
Oh
buy your
wow.
hard drive and you put it in there. And just, I wanted to keep my costs down on that
Mm-hmm.
hardware, but I enjoy it and do it. I mean, if you're doing it now, I might just suggest buying an off the shelf one that you can specify a large
Like a
enough
DAP
hard drive.
node or something.
Yeah, like DAP node is great. I mean, DAP node, if you're not into hardware, you're not kind of the geeking the computer and wanting to build your own, and they're incredibly simple to build. It requires only a Phillips screwdriver, and there's only 3 components to put into a NUC. So it's like you put them in with your hands, and then you just screw the case back on. So it's not like really
Mm-hmm.
building a computer if you see like gamers doing all this fancy stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But DAP nodes are great. I will say DAP nodes have a much higher cost. I mean, I think
They are.
they are close to $2,000 or 1,500 somewhere in there. And one of their
Yep.
strategies, and talking to a couple of the folks at some conventions, is that they buy really top of the line hardware. And they do that because they find with the DAP node interface, which makes it real easy to install the staking software, and makes it really easy to subscribe into a staking pool. But they find that people like running lots of different DApps on that hardware. So it's
Yeah.
really overspec so that it could run 4 or 5 different DApps and protocols on there at once. So they overspec that hardware, but you pay a premium for it out the gate to
Yeah.
have that capacity. My view was I wanted my Ethereum node just to be function specific. The only software and the only function it does is to attest on the Ethereum blockchain and run the Rocket Pool software, right? There's nothing else that computer is going to do. And so I just bought the hardware I needed, which was still medium spec, and just installed the native software myself, or the Rocket Pool stack really kind of does it all for you in a couple of command lines. So,
Yeah.
you know, that was easier than subscribing to DAP node.
So Ken, I want to end with asking you about more of what you think Ethereum proof of stake means to you, kind of with a decentralized perspective, and as far as mining pools, on how you think it enhances the security and what benefits that it has for the Ethereum network.
Yeah, so it's wow, those are 3 really good questions, right? I mean, I think to me, like I'm a little bit older, right? I had the chance to live through the 1990s as a recent college graduate, right? And kind of see the beginnings of the internet. I think I was too young to really understand the potential that it had, right? And in the early days, you bought these kind of private networks, right? You would install the America Online CD-ROM, or you subscribed, I think it was CompuServe or one of these other kind of, networks where you would go in. And it wasn't until I was in college and they started to introduce Ethernet, and they started to introduce the early, I think it was Mosaic, the browsers, and you could see this internet. Anybody can create a web page, anybody can build whatever they wanted to on it, and no one really owned the internet. It was just, you just needed to find a computer that was connected to it, and it would start to work. And I see now, now that I'm in my 50s, and kind of the blockchain is starting to mature into a legitimate infrastructure design, right? I really see Ethereum as being the closest blockchain to what the internet is right now, right? It's permissionless, it's open source, anybody can build upon it. You can build layers upon it, you can build apps on it. So I feel incredibly excited about that one. And I think out of all the other layer ones that are out there, my perspective is I think this is why Ethereum is going to succeed, because it's permissionless, it's not owned by anyone, it's created, it's in this public good, right? I definitely see home stakers or individuals the ability to run their own node and to be able to attest to it, to provide that security is essential into making it decentralized, right? Same way that anybody can run their own mail server at home, you should be able to run your own Ethereum node there. The challenge, I think, is, of course, the financial buy-in, because they did proof of stake. They wanted you to put some deposit on there. That for most people, coming up with 32 ETH is, a very large barrier. And I do see staking pools doing a couple of things. One, they reduce that barrier, that financial barrier to node operators, so you can do that. And two, they allow other individuals that maybe don't have the know-how, and actually it's not that they don't have the know-how, it's that they don't want to invest in the know-how. Because I think it's simple enough now. There's enough explainers that everybody can learn how to be a node operator. Same way, if you were able to figure out how to install your wireless router at home, you too can be a node operator, right? It's getting to that point. But it allows these other individuals that just want to contribute to Ethereum by doing a liquid staked ETH. They can do it, and they can participate. And I think protocols that allow both really provide an advantage to both. The node operator, I think, and I know others might disagree with me, but I actually think you're doing more of a service to Ethereum by running in a staking pool, because not only are you staking your ETH and providing that security, but you're affording the opportunity for others who don't want that and just want the LST token to kind of carpool on your node, right? So in the case of an LED8, not only are you the driver, but you've got 3 other carpoolers with you, on the Ethereum network, versus if you're a solo validator, well, you're just driving a single occupancy vehicle with only your ETH. What good are you doing? So I'm a little bit biased in that way. I actually think liquid staking token and staking pool participation is a little bit more healthier for the network, within reason, right? I do have concerns about any protocol becoming exceeding that 33% threshold for what
like Lido.
Yeah, I think it could be anyone, right? I mean, there's certainly one right now that is, approaching that, if not nearing that. And I do think it does create a number of at least philosophical concerns about, well, that is the Byzantine general's consensus threshold for a malicious actor to be able to cross in order to have an attack strategy, right? And so there's some counter arguments to it. Maybe it's it's spread up by multiple validators, but still the ideal of collusion exists there. And I think that for a healthy network, you would ideally want to have that number not approach or exceed that number.
We're almost out of time. My last question for you is, how do we get more people involved? How do we make more of a decentralized ecosystem for more people to stake, home stakers? And do you think it's the buy-in? Do you think it's the education? Do you think it's teaching the community? How do we get more people involved, including
I think
people like myself that can offer a different perspective?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's all of those things that you just described, right? And I think the answer is indeed people like you that are willing to not only take the look at these things to kind of research it and try to understand, well, what is it we're doing, but more importantly, those that are willing to kind of advocate and share what they know of this space with others, and to kind of help them that want to get in. I remember, back to the days of the 90s, I was the guy in the neighborhood running over to all my friends and neighbors, helping them, configure their computer with IP addresses so it can connect into the internet, right? It was like no one knew how to do that. And kind of like today, it's just kind of a given. You go to the store, you buy this device, you plug it into your house, and then you're up on the internet, right? Every kid knows how to reset their internet router, but back in the days, it took a lot more, and I still see that. So I would just continue to encourage doing these educational videos well after you get your node up and operating. Continue to share your experience with the world.
Well, Ken, I just want to thank you for meeting me today and then sharing your experience as well. You've given me a lot of good information that I hope to use as I move forward. I would love to reconnect with you again in the next 3 to 6 months as I get my validator up and running. I have a little clock ticking until I finish this, but I would definitely like to meet up with you and talk more, and more of an intense conversation, because I have a feeling that so much is going to change in the next 6 months in this area, in this space. So there's going to be so much more to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd very much like that.
Well, Ken, it was so nice to meet you. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll connect soon.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Take care.